The following is a presentation of the Boltup Sports Media Network.
Here comes pressure, throws it to Eckler on the screen. He's got a block to the 10, to the 5, into the end zone.
High pass. Did Williams make that catch? My goodness.
For a first down, Herbert with time. Now running out of time. Throws on the run. Down the sideline. Caught in the end zone. Keenan Allen for the touchdown.
Throws, and again it's intercepted. And that's Asante Samuel.
Here's another one. Watch out.
How did it feel when Derwin James absolutely powerbombed the out of you on national television?
You're listening to the Shock Therapy Podcast with Tyler Lawrence and Zach Alfers.
What's up, Zachy? Zach, how you been, man?
Busy. It's been really hot and in Sacramento mostly. But I'm excited that football is less than a week or so away. Real football, not training camp, preseason, which, is fun in its own right. But I'm ready for some real football that matters. And I'm just excited for the start of the regular season.
Yeah, and I think we're going to start getting into a weekly rhythm. I know, during training camp, we were kind of slow. I'm in the process of opening up a yoga studio with my wife. I'm dying at work. You've got baseball going on. How's the baseball team going?
It's good. Season wrapping up. We only have 2 more homestands left, so 12 more full games. But it's been a fun season. It's just so busy when we're still playing games. So it'll be nice to get out of that rhythm. So I have a consistent work schedule, because in the season my schedule just all over the place, and which makes it really hard to review film and get stuff to talk about when we go live and record these things. So I'm excited to be able to get back into things.
It's been a busy few weeks for me too, dude. It's just a lot. I've had a chance to watch the games. I haven't really had a chance to really break them down. I think this episode is kind of good to talk a little bit about the games. We're going to kind of focus on what we expect from this 53-man roster. And then we'll just kind of talk about those players and what we saw from them during the game. Let's get ahead and get started. Let's start with Justin Herbert and Easton Stick. We haven't seen Herbert at all. I don't think there's been any indication we're going to see him at all this preseason. It's kind of interesting with Easton Stick playing the entire game last week. Max Duggan didn't even get a chance to sniff the field. And I kind of like that they did that, because I think they – Brandon Staley was talking about in his press conference that he wanted to give Easton Stick that opportunity to play from behind, try to drive his team, will his team to a win. Didn't end up happening. Easton Stick's kind of been up and down. I want to get your take. How has Easton Stick played this preseason?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And I think it's kind of a real good kind of summary of how this entire team has played through the first 2 weeks of preseason. But I think first game, I think we saw some really good things. I think last game, I like that he had to work through some things, work through some struggles, work through playing behind. I saw some things that I was happy with, and I saw some things that, would concern me if we needed to see serious time from Easton Stick. I think I like the fact that he's getting better. And I like that we actually gave him a shot to go out and prove himself. And I think it's something he's earned. He's gotten better. He's been a great presence in the locker room. Even when he's not playing, he is involved with his team. So I thought it was about time that he got a shot, that he got plenty of live game reps. That first game, I thought we saw some of Easton Stick's best football at the NFL level. Accurate, decisive, would have had a really big game if it weren't for a couple drops, which I don't think were his fault. I think receivers just didn't come out with the play. This past game, I think you saw struggles of a young quarterback who hasn't had a whole lot of experience. But I think it's a good role to have. I think I like the process here. Easton Stick has put his time with the team, hasn't had a chance to go out and actually earn the backup quarterback role. And now and so we gave him some shots. Dugan's only thrown three passes through the first 2 games of preseason, which I think is a little concerning for someone that you went and used a 7th round draft pick on. Not too concerned because of who's on top. This team is built around Justin Herbert's success. No Justin Herbert, this team isn't going to live up to its expectations. I think we have a solid backup in Easton Stick, and now Deegan gets to earn his time on the practice squad, get familiar with the playbook, and learn as he goes.
Yeah, I think that we're headed toward a 2 quarterback making the 53-man roster. I think the fact that they wanted to give Easton Stick that opportunity to try to will his team from behind, put him in some stressful situations and see how he plays. I thought 50% of his passes, I think that he missed some shots really early. As he starts to get feel like he's improving. I am not very confident in if we have to see him play a couple games this season. I'm not really confident with any quarterback though. Like Mitchell Trubisky is backing up Josh Allen, I think right now, or maybe he's with the Steelers. But I'm not. I don't think there's a single quarterback in the league where I'm really, really confident in their ability to come and will their team if they get asked to play. I think that Easton Stick is just a developmental prospect, and I think that the biggest value of a second-string quarterback has nothing to do with the arm. It has everything to do with the mental processing ability of being able to look at things from the point of view of a player, relay those things to your quarterback, somebody to study film with. That's the role of a second-string quarterback. And Max Duggan, he just finished his first 4 year with the Chargers, signed his 5th-year contract on a 1-year deal to come play with the Chargers. And, I think that the Chargers saw enough from him mentally to be able to say, hey, this guy can help our quarterback be better. And that's the whole role of a backup quarterback. I don't care if he never throws a pass his entire career, just as long as he's able to relay the information to the starter to help get the starter ready for game day. That's the job of a backup quarterback.
No, and I think that's a really good point to make, especially looking at those 2 guys that we have. Think about their collegiate careers. Easton Stick, a 4-year starter at North Dakota State, won 4 championships, has 47, 48 career wins on his belt. The guy is used to winning. He expects winning. So that's a type of guy that you want around you. Max Duggan just took a TCU team who hasn't been relevant in a very long time and took them on one of their best runs in program history. Another guy who's not going to be throwing the football a lot this year, but you can impact the locker room in other ways. There is value besides just being on the field. And I think those 2 guys are big, are good. What is the
contributors?
word?
Yeah, they're good contributors, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Examples is the word I'm looking for. I don't know why I can't think of examples.
Yeah. So is Max Duggan going to make this team as a practice squad guy? It's really hard to say because we haven't seen him play almost at all this, and we should get to see him play quite a bit this 3rd game. He's not on the bubble. I don't think that he's realistically a viable option for the Chargers to, keep as a 3rd quarterback. They kept Easton Stick every single season, but Max Duggan is wildly inaccurate. And if he doesn't make the 53-man roster, nobody's going to waste a roster spot on a player that they didn't even get to see at all during the preseason.
And I wonder if that has anything to do, with the Easton Stick getting all of the preseason 2 games. I think even without those reps, Easton Stick he's been in an NFL locker room for a long time. Even without playing, that still holds value. So I think Easton Stick would never make it through waivers. I think Duggan has a serious chance. We haven't seen him play. He's thrown 3 pass attempts in the NFL. So,
and that could be by design, right? Like they might even be able to say, hey, let's not play him very much, just off the off chance. Let's go ahead and stash him on the practice squad. Let him fall through waivers. He's going to fall through waivers likely, even if he did play, but especially if nobody got to see him play at all, right?
Yeah. And yeah, it kind of gets you
He's just not
curious
ready.
to think he is not ready. Well, and we just seen it with Easton Stick. We're not. How long was this man a receiver, quarterback 3 on our depth chart? And so it takes some time. I look that Staley doesn't rush young guys. And let's be completely honest, Dugan is a 7th round pick. Even after leading a team to a championship game, he's there for a reason. He has stuff to work on, and that's going to take some time.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. Let's go ahead and move on to the running backs. So Austin Eckler is going to be our starter. And I kind of want to talk. We know that Joshua Kelly is going to make the roster. We know Isaiah Spiller is going to make the roster. My question to you is, on a depth chart, based off of what you saw those first 2 games, do you think Isaiah Spiller is ready to lead Kelly on the depth chart? They're probably, if I had to say, they're probably going to finish with the same number of snaps. But who's going to be that first guy to get an opportunity? Is it going to be Kelly, or have we seen enough from Spiller? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm excited. I'm excited. I think I can't speak highly enough of Josh Kelly, the journey that this guy's been on. Having such high expectations as a 3rd round pick, getting, starting his career at a really fast, on a fast track, and then kind of derailed because of injuries, but just his work ethic. You love to root for those types of guys. And so really like what he's been doing in the offseason to get himself to this level. Isaiah Spiller is just a different type of talent. And I think you saw it on that 71-yard touchdown that he broke. The dude is big. He's powerful.
Got called back.
That got called back on the holding. The dude can run. And I was so surprised. I was just like, he's going to get caught. He's going to get caught. But he was actually gaining, space in between the pursuing defender. So I'm excited. I think that's one of those things that we haven't seen enough from either of them to kind of give either one of those guys a nod. I think, based on this coaching staff's kind of philosophy, I think day one, Josh Kelly is going to get that nod. I think he's earned it. I think Isaiah Spiller still has a little more to prove. I would like to see his consistency as on like a yard per carry basis carry over to, on a regular season game when he's playing against 1st and 2nd stringers. But I think I'm very, very excited with the potential of this group. I think Josh Kelly easily number 2, but wouldn't be surprised if those touches between Kelly and Spiller kind of even out moving, further through the season.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that they're probably going to finish with a pretty similar number of snaps. I'm really interested in developing Isaiah Spiller because he's the only back on the roster next season, more than likely. Joshua Kelly, we know Austin Eckler's gone. We know what Austin Eckler can do. We know what he means to this franchise, to this offensive unit just in whole. Like, majority of the production that has come from this team over the last couple of years has been Austin Eckler, air guitaring his way into the end zone. So we know who he is. We know he's going to get the bulk of the snaps. But Kelly, it took him 3 years to develop into somebody that we can even rely on. But I still don't see the high-end upside as an RB2. I still look at him as a really quality RB3 to get you, 50 carries during the season. But I think we need a running mate. I think that Kellen Moore has developed running back 2s pretty well. I would say Tony Pollard was a really, really good RB2 there with the Cowboys. And I think that we need Spiller to take on more carries because he may be our bell cow next year. More than likely, that's our guy. And so I want to see Spiller get more opportunities because I think for this season, I don't think that there's a big gap between Kelly and Spiller today. But I look at the future outlook of the 2 players, and I think Spiller is going to become an every down back as soon as next season. The Chargers are not willing to spend money to the position group. They don't have the money to spend to the position group. You're probably going to see, an early to mid-round running back drafted next season to be Spiller's running mate because we're not going to be able to find anybody in free agency that's, worth their weight in gold. Spiller needs to get those carries. He needs to develop, and we need him next season because we don't have money to spend elsewhere on the roster. So I want to see Spiller with those carries.
I was just going to say one last thing about the running back room. Developing Spiller, I think, is a great point. I also really think that those offensive touches are going to be very similar because of how valuable and how many snaps Kelly plays on the special teams unit. Very versatile player, which I think goes back to your other point. Maybe not a true RB2, but a great depth option to have.
And he's a core special teamer too. He plays on the punt,
and he's good. He's a important contributor to that phase of the game. So the fresher guys can be, the better. So I think this is a good thing, a good type of decision to have. And I think I'm more excited than I've been about a running back 2 battle in a long time for the Chargers.
The Chargers let go of Larry Roundtree after a breakout game for Elijah Dotson. He seemed to have come back down to earth a little bit. Still, I mean, his first run against the Saints where he ran over that linebacker, I was like, okay, you've got some speed and you've also got some power. That was outstanding. But then you started seeing some of the rookie mistakes, the drops, right out of the backfield. I don't know if I've seen enough from him to be like, okay, he warrants a spot on the roster. He's not playing any of the core special teams units as a starter today. That could potentially change. I kind of just want to get your thoughts. Like, have you seen enough for him to be able to make that 53-man roster? Or do you think that we're kind of set at running back and, he's probably going to be a practice squad stash at the very least? I would be very surprised if we didn't carry at least one running back on the practice squad. And I haven't seen anything from any of the other running backs on the roster. So, talk about Elijah Dotson and kind of what your expectations are for him.
Yeah. I think that first game, the 2 carries, 140 something yards for 2 touchdowns. I think, that got everyone's eyes opened. I think definitely if we had this conversation last week, I'd say Elijah Dotson, very good chance at bursting that roster bubble. Based on what we've seen this last game, I think he was just one splash play away from really getting the coaching staff's eyes on this. He's going to be 4th running back on this roster if he makes it. When evaluating those depth pieces, I think you really have to pay a lot of attention into special teams work. Darius Davis has all but secured the return job with his 82-yard house call. Offers a little more, I think, depth as far as a 5th receiver than Dotson would as a 4th running back. I just don't think there's enough space. I think we have a lot of other depth concerns at more crucial positions. And I don't think he's done enough. Well, there's just not enough space as far on the special teams unit to warrant enough value there. Would love to continue to stash him and build that guy up, especially like you alluded to, that we only have one running back locked up through 2024. But I don't think he's going to make the 2023 53-man roster just based on our special teams depth and then all of the guys that he's have to battle on his position specific depth chart as well.
Yeah, I think what you saw with Elijah Dotson when he, those 2 touchdowns that he broke for those huge gains, he had 6 carries for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Rams. And then against the Saints, he got a couple carries again, but kind of came back down to earth, like I said earlier. He dropped 6 carries for 21 yards. So I think that you saw the first week the potential, and then the second week the lack of development from a rookie. So I just don't think that we need him, and I don't see enough special teams. Also, Darius Davis has that spot locked up, but second on that list, and we'll talk about him a little bit more here pretty soon. But John Hightower is currently the second returner on the depth chart. So if you're gonna go and try to find that piece to be, Isaiah Spiller's running bait next season, he's not there today. And I don't see another team picking him up in waivers as a rookie after, 12 carries for, under 100 yards, essentially is what it comes out to. So he's just not there yet.
No, I don't. And beyond just the lack of repeat running success, he also had 2 glaring drops hit him right in the face during crunch time of that second game where we needed him to make a play and he just couldn't get it done. But it's one of those things where I'm not done with the player. Just needs some time to develop. That was a pressure, and he didn't play all game, and then we threw him into 2-minute hustle period where we needed nothing but points, and he just kind of dropped the ball. But I this year, not a fit. Stash this guy on the roster, learn the offense, get comfortable, and I think next year there's going to be a lot more options as far as special teams jobs up for grabs, as well as other running back holes to fill.
Talking a little bit about wide receiver, Keenan Allen looks like he's having a resurgent. He looks incredible in training camp. You see highlight after highlight after highlight, and what I really like is that he's been moving around the formation. He's been primarily a slot wide receiver, really throughout his career at the Chargers, and Kellen Moore has been changing that up a bit, creating mismatches outside, creating mismatches in the slot, using him in the motion, using a big slot wide receiver and Mike Williams. Also have the ability to move Palmer. Like the whole wide receiver room can't be talked about enough, just because we're seeing so much different utilization of that position group under Kellen Moore. So I don't think we got to talk too much about Kellen Moore and what he's going to be able to provide to this whole wide receiver room, because I think it's readily apparent. Mike Williams obviously is going to be your big play threat deep down the field. Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnson. That's kind of the area I really kind of want to talk about real quick, because right now, in my opinion, I feel like Josh Palmer is the third on the depth chart. I think you're going to see a lot more snaps from him with some Quentin Johnson kind of sprinkled in. What have you seen out of Quentin Johnson? Because the other thing that I've noticed is Josh Palmer hasn't played in the preseason. So Quentin Johnson has been that guy, not getting a lot of snaps in preseason, usually just kind of the first quarter. And then he's come in kind of sprinkled for specific plays designed specifically for him, like that touchdown. But, what are your thoughts out of this position group? And we'll talk a little bit about that 6 wide receiver spot here in a sec.
Yeah. Top of the depth chart. Love what I'm seeing. Keenan, I've always been a huge fan of his. I think Mike Williams had a really slow start to his training camp. We haven't seen him in preseason either, but even just in camp, haven't seen him making splash plays. But you're starting to hear more about him in practice. So he's kind of developing. Josh Palmer's been dealing with some injuries, but I like not rushing him back. And he's
been making plays too. Like I've heard his name just as much as I've heard Quentin Johnson, making huge plays. Yeah, that's also like huge. Like Josh Palmer hasn't been quiet in training camp.
No, not at all. I think you're starting to feel it's just the natural progression of, vets in this league. It's so hard to play at this level, especially when you're learning a new offense, you're learning personnel groups, you're learning new terminology for things that you've grown up accustomed to.
I think he's there.
No, and I think you're seeing it. We took him for a 3rd round, and I think we're going to get a steal with that pick when all is said and done, and all of those draft picks ahead of him kind of fizzled out. I love what we got at that depth, and I think you switch however you feel between Q and Josh Palmer. I think there are very good other receiving groups that you could stack up 1 through 3. Throw another 5 guys out there, and I don't know who's number 4 receiver do you want more than the Chargers. I don't go find me one. And I think as soon as we get to 4
one of those guys
5,
could be a starter for a bad team.
Palmer could be a legit number 2 option for some teams. I believe that. Mike Williams could lead a receiving group. Keenan Allen's done.
But I'm just talking about Josh Palmer or Quentin Johnson. Like one of those 2 guys who's going to be our 3 or 4 is a legitimate starter for a bad team.
And I love that for a couple of reasons. I think first and foremost, we've seen it last year. What one, and in our case it was 2, but what one lingering injury can do to a room. Last year our receiving group was supposed to be a strength of this team, and because of those injuries, it wasn't. Palmer feasted on those opportunities. He got a lot better. Q is going to get his chances in here. The depth of this receiver room, I think, is what's going to speak volumes to it. And now you got guys that are going to be able to spell Keenan and Mike if they come down with stuff. That it's part of this league that expecting 17 games from guys who have been in the league that long, it's just not smart to do. So being able to backfill that pipeline, I don't think it's a position that I don't think you could have too much of. And I think this year, with all 5 of those guys in-house, all doing a little bit different things, I'm really excited for this group, especially with the new Kellen Moore offense.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I think Josh Palmer is probably going to finish with more snaps, more targets, and be a legitimate weapon and threat. And I don't think you're going to see quite as much Quentin Johnson. I think they're probably going to design some plays for him just to get his feet wet kind of thing. But I don't think this is the year that you're going to see Q, have that, rookie hot start. It's not going to happen. There's too many mouths to feed in this offense. But I think he is a legitimate weapon, and I think he's going to develop into a really quality wide receiver for us. 5th on that depth chart is going to be Darius Davis. To be honest, I really like what I've seen out of Darius Davis, not just in the return game. Yeah, he had the kickoff or punt return touchdown. That was great to see. We've seen him on kickoffs, kick returns, be able to get up to the 25-yard line at least consistently. But even as a wide receiver, he's been making plays in training camp, not deep down the field, but purely as a slot wide receiver. He's a small guy. He has to play in the slot. He's been pretty reliable. I saw a couple catches in both games from him. I really like what I've seen in both of, his special teams ability, that speed, but also as a safety blanket in the middle of the field, small catch radius, tiny guy, but somebody who I really think that I wasn't expecting quite as much to see from him as a wide receiver. And I think we've seen more. In general, I think we've seen quite a bit more.
I think Davis has definitely been, one of my surprises of training camp. And I think we knew the speed was going to translate. His vision in the return game, I think, just jumped out to you on his college tape, and you thought it was just going to be a matter of time before he was able to figure that out at the next level. And it took him one shot. And he housed that thing. So love what I've seen from him in the return game. I think he offers you a little more as a receiver than we've seen from our last receiver 5s in the last 3 or 4 years. Really see a lot of potential moving forward as a route runner, as a guy to take screens and I think early on in Q's career, you're going to see him handle those screens. You're going to see him handle the jet sweeps. The goal for him is to eventually be an all-around number 1, where you're not going to want him to give him those types of touches. And so I think Darius Davis would be a nice fill for that role long-term. Something that, he's not the size of Joe Reed, but that's exactly what we wanted. An explosive returner who could give us some yard after catch or some big playmaking ability as a receiver. And so I really, really excited for his development, and day one, can't wait for him to get that first kickoff opening night, because watch out, that guy can run.
He's speedy. So the first game, he had 2 receptions on 2 targets for 21 yards, and then against the Saints, he had 3 receptions on 3 targets. So he's batting 100 right now, 24 yards. And then you've been seeing him, scoring touchdowns, making catches. I went to 2 of the practices this season, and he looks like a really good developmental player. Now I kind of want to talk lastly about that last wide receiver spot. Really, I think it's 3 players that are battling for it. John Hightower, Keelan Doss, and Tyrell Bynum are the guys that kind of stood out to me. Are we going to carry 6 wide receivers? And if so, which guy are you rolling with? Because The camp darling, I think, has been John Hightower, but the player who probably has shown the most in the games has been Keelan Doss. Keelan Doss has led the Chargers receiving room back-to-back games. Against the Saints, he had 3 receptions for 42 yards on 5 targets. And then against the Rams, he had 3 receptions for 39 yards on 4 targets. So he has been steady, productive. But John Hightower has got the touchdowns in training camp. He's got the speed to beat you deep down the field. If the Chargers do carry 6 wide receivers, which of those guys do you think makes it?
Yeah. At this point, I think Terrell Bynum is a solid practice stash guy. I just don't think I've seen enough from him to warrant letting Hightower or Keelan walk. And I think a couple things. Hightower, I think in practice had definitely early on, you couldn't help but notice him. He was making, if not multiple, at least one really big play a game. It offers some return ability, which I think is valuable. I think what's concerning is the fact that we have not seen Hightower play in a preseason game. He
did play last week, but he wasn't noticeable. Like he
did he get some snaps? I know he
got some snaps against the Saints, but you didn't see too much from him. He had against the Saints, he had 6 targets and he caught 1 reception for 10 yards.
Did he get he was on the stat sheet?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm looking at the Rams game.
So he did play. He did miss the Rams game. He did play, but 6 targets, 1 reception. Not all his fault. I think that
I guess
was wildly inaccurate against the Saints. I thought he was under pressure a lot, though, as well. So I don't put it all on him. But, I mean, when you're looking at the stat sheet and you're comparing him to Keelan Doss, there's a lot to be said for that.
Well, and I didn't realize that he got a snap in there.
That's the issue. You didn't realize, right?
Right. Not impactful. And I think I do think a 6th receiver is going to make this team. Just if at the very least as a placeholder to solidify Jalen Guyton's potential return once he recovers from his ACL injury, because he's going to start the year on the PUP list. Momentum is huge. And I think Keelan has been so consistent. It's about time. This kid has been in the league for 4 or 5 years now and hasn't cracked a starting roster. And I think he has a lot of what the Chargers covet at that position: size, route running acumen. He's a smart player, a great teammate, phenomenal run blocker. So I think he could do a lot of things for you. Obviously, I'm biased as playing high school with the kid and been rooting for him since I saw him come into the league. Hightower, I think, has just not got the reps recently. And so I think that's going to be the big factor there. What have you done for me recently? And Keelan's definitely been the most consistent of the two, even though I think John Hightower does offer a little more explosiveness. But I don't think that really much matters, because I do, at the end of the day, think that is just going to be a placeholder, because I'd like to think Jalen Guyton makes his way back onto this roster at some point this season.
Yeah, I agree. I do think it's probably going to be Keelan Doss. And I think you're going to see John Hightower make his way over to the practice squad. You did touch on Jalen Guyton. Jalen Guyton, I think, he's got that spot when he comes back. I just don't think he is ready at this point in time. He has been practicing. He was in pads, catching balls out of the jugs machine, but no contacts yet. So that's kind of where I am on that. Xander Horvath is going to be our fullback. He's a core special teamer. He's not fighting for his roster spot against anybody. It's just being handed to him. On the flip side of that, at the tight end room, you got Gerald Everett, Donald Parham, and then potentially a battle, potentially carrying both, but Stone Smart and Trey McKitty. Talk about a little bit about what you've heard from the tight end room to be honest, in my opinion, I don't think Donald Parham has played all that well in the preseason. He's had a couple drops. He's missed a couple key blocks, and the PFF grades for the blocking of our tight ends has not been good. That's our main concern, because I feel like that's something that is needed in this offense, in this Kellen Moore offense, is tight ends who can get out and block.
Well, and I think that is overwhelmingly the weakness of this group. It is run blocking. Gerald Everett, he's shown he can do it in a pinch. I wouldn't say that is a strength of his game. Well, and he's not impactful. He may be able to get in your way. He's not somebody that is going to make a difference for you in that phase. Parm, I think you're seeing a young guy who's had some things to work on, who hasn't been able to consistently work on those things because of the injuries that he's dealt with. But I'm not really looking at Parm as the run blocking tight end. I'm really hoping that he develops into the deep threat red zone tight end that a 6'7" guy who runs the speed that he does should be. Trey McKitty, I think, has been his very underwhelming career thus far. I think we saw some things rookie year. Another guy derailed by injuries. Haven't seen him effectively impact the run game like we saw rookie year, and I'm not exactly sure what that is. I will say in his defense, he is now learning a new offense. I still need to see a lot more development. I think out of those three guys, Parm, McKitty, and Stone Smart has been the most impressive, at least in the preseason games. And the guy to give, I don't know, I think is really kind of, he's enticing. And he's one of those guys who, more than any of the other ones, I starting to, want to root for. Not that I don't want to root for the other guys, just that I don't know. I think, I want an addition to this room. I like Stone Smart, what he can offer. I think what Stone Smart offers is incredible intelligence at being a D1 quarterback, playing receiver collegiately, now learning his third position as tight end. I think he's a really knowledgeable guy. I think he's a good pass catcher. I haven't seen him impact the game from a running standpoint, and I think that's what we need. So Hunter Campmoyers have made some nice plays in the passing game as well. I don't think he's really on the roster bubble at this point. Stone Smart, I think, has a case. I think Stone Smart has a case, but I really think you got quarterback 3 potentially, and then that tight end 4, which are I think 2 of the key spots that I'm looking as far as trying to fill out this 53-man roster.
Yeah, so I think without a doubt, Gerald Everett's going to be our starter. Donald Parham, he's still going to be the backup, because I think that you look at his size, his athleticism. I just feel like he hasn't developed into the red zone threat we thought he was going to be, the big jump ball threat. He's had plenty of opportunities. He just hasn't come down with them. And then I think there is a battle for the last 2 spots. Stone Smart and Trey McKitty probably have the inside track. I like what I've seen from Hunter Campmoyer, but I don't like him enough to make the 53. I think he probably gets stashed on the practice squad, and I think we do carry 4. But in my opinion, I think that Stone Smart is going to jump Trey McKitty on the depth chart, because I just don't think we've seen the run blocking ability that we did see Trey McKitty's rookie year. He has not been great at it. He's had an opportunity to start last season, was pretty much irrelevant as a wide receiver. And I think that you're going to see the field more, being able to catch passes, being able to stretch the field, being a safety blanket. Stone Smart has shown that he can do that. You said, former quarterback. Against the Saints, he had 4 receptions on 5 targets for 32 yards. I like kind of what I've seen in the development of Stone Smart more. I think Trey McKitty makes it because he was a 3rd-round draft pick, and because he is a core special teamer. But I haven't seen what I've wanted to see out of Trey McKitty, and that sours me a little bit on, you're drafted in the third round. You're expected to, develop into a future starter. McKitty looks far away from any sort of relevant player on game day outside of his special teams abilities. Probably going to be more on punt and kick return, punt return. Probably not going to see him on kickoff.
Well, and I just want to say one last thing why I like Stone Smart over a third quarterback or even Elijah Dotson at this point. He has been consistently being rolled out with first team punt coverage
units.
Yeah, punt coverages. So there you go. If you're not going to be playing hundreds of snaps at the top of the depth chart, you need to make an impact in the third phase of the game. And Stone Smart has shown he can do that.
Yeah, I do like Stone Smart more than I like Trey McKitty today. I do. With the offensive line, you're going to see Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, Corey Linsley, Jamari Sawyer, and Trey Pipkins from left to right. I am really not happy with the depth of this unit at all. That's my biggest concern on this entire roster right now is the depth behind them. We did get to see Foster Sorrell start a couple games last season. He started against Nick Bosa, and he didn't allow a single sack against Nick Bosa. So there's some potential there. I still wanted to see another veteran presence on this because, Jordan McFadden as a 5th-round draft pick, Zach Bailey as an undrafted guy that we really don't know much about. Will Clapp has not looked good as a starter. That whole position group after the starters is just not something I have a whole lot of confidence in. I know Zach Bailey offers flexibility to move from center to tackle, guard to tackle. Will Clapp can go from center to guard. McFadden can really play, wherever you need him to play. Sorrell's going to be purely off the edge. One name that's not on this list who's been talked about potentially not making the roster, at least the initial roster, is the Chargers 2019, 2020 6th-round draft pick, Brendan Jaimes. Been really quiet. I think that his easiest track onto the roster is that center guard flexibility. But you've got Will Clapp there, and I don't know how much you need that. And you haven't seen enough from him to warrant really a roster spot. I think he's probably going to regress to the practice squad. What have you seen out of Zion Johnson, Jamari Sawyer, who've really got the bulk of the snaps on the offensive line in the last 2 games, at least to start? And kind of what are your expectations of this position group going forward? Are we going to add a body before the start of the season? Just give me all your thoughts.
First off, I am so excited to see those big boys that you just mentioned, Zion Johnson, Jamari Sawyer, being able to work downhill. And that's what this Keelan Moore offense is designed to do, get these big bodies moving. And I think it really speaks to the strengths of this unit. I am so excited for that front 5. I can't wait to watch them gel and get in their zone. I will say the depth is a bit concerning. I really, really thought the entire offensive line played really great that opening game against the Rams. It felt like Stick had all time to throw. We were gashing them in the run game, and we're really moving. I think that protection, that ability to move guys running the football, I think it started to phase away with a lot more physical and a lot more diverse first 2 levels with the Saints defense as opposed to the Rams. Still really excited with the progress that both Zion Sawyer has been making, seeing Rashawn Slater back on the field. We know what we're going to get with Corey Linsley, and excited to see Trey Pipkins continue to build off of his best year. Foster Sorrell, I think we need tackle depth. I think he's definitely making it. Will Clapp, he's their best backup center option. I think you have to carry at least 2 centers. Brendan Hymas, I think his time is done. Jordan McFadden, I like as a depth piece. He hasn't had a shot like Brendan Hymas has. Zach Bailey, I think, especially at this point, as like a ninth offense when you already have your number 2 center. I think that tackle guard flexibility is a lot more valuable than guard center, especially with our tackle. Most of our tackles have the ability to bump inside. So I think Brendan Hymas is expendable at this point. We've given a shot. I definitely think he'll find another home for somebody who's really needing some depth there. I'm just ready for us to move away from that pick. I haven't seen a whole lot to get excited about. Wouldn't mind a nice roster guard to bring in to help the progression of Zion and Jamari, but not sure who really is out there and who would really make this group better. I think the one thing that I think is missing would be like a veteran guard presence. Well, honestly, a veteran guard or tackle presence, because there's so many young guys outside of Corey Lindsley. I could definitely see a veteran taking, moving Zach Bailey off of this list. But right now, I think Zach Bailey is my 9, and I'm letting Brendan Hymas walk.
I think I'm moving him probably to the practice squad, Brendan Hymes.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I'm not comfortable with Zach Bailey is my biggest takeaway from that. So Zach Bailey against the Rams allowed, I just had the PFF stats, but for whatever reason, PFF's been annoying. He allowed, so Austin Pleasance allowed 4 pressures. Bailey only allowed 1. Jaime's allowed 3. This isn't unlocking for me, but anyways, I don't see enough from Zach Bailey to really warrant a roster spot. Will Clapp, yeah, at least he's a veteran. He started games. Jordan McFadden, he offers that flexibility to move inside or out. Was a really, really well-regarded college player. I think he won like the offensive lineman of the year for the ACC. And there's a lot of upside with a guy like that, kind of similar to how we had with Jamari Sawyer. Foster Sarell, he's got starting experience. Zach Bailey, complete unknown, like the least likely player to play, because if somebody does get hurt, Foster Sarell is the first guy to tackle. Jordan McFadden's the next guy to tackle, and then the first guy to guard. Will Clapp is the first guy to center. So Zach Bailey just doesn't give you a whole lot of confidence. I know he's got some flexibility to kick inside, but he's just not the guy that I'm really, excited to see there. And I want to see a veteran presence other than Will Clapp to help develop those guys in the film room. And there's guys out there. I probably can't think of anybody off the top of my head. I don't have anything pulled up, but at this point in the season, there's guys that waited to sign to find the right fit. Maybe the Chargers could be a right fit for somebody who's at the end of his career, maybe, early 30s, who's just looking to catch onto a team now that training camp is over. I don't know, though. I don't feel super, super comfortable with our backups, just in general. Moving on to the edge class. So our starting edge is going to be Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. We'll have Tuli Tuipulotu and Chris Rumpf backing them up. I really like this group this year. I think that getting Tuli in the second round was huge, because I think that we needed a reliable future developmental piece who is a monster against the run and also led the NCAA in sacks last season. Give me your thoughts on this position group.
Yeah. Really, I've been very excited about Tuli. Finally going out and drafting a legitimate edge rusher in the first 2 rounds. A guy who led the nation in sacks, and a guy who comes from a great pedigree of NFL talent and is just a hard worker. I was hearing this story this last preseason game. All through training camp, Tuli has been going up to Khalil and Joey and calling them sir. to the point where
which is hilarious.
Joey's just like, dude, like, I'm just a guy. Like, I'm only, I'm just a guy. You don't have to call me sir. I'm not your coach. Ask me. I'm going to be a resource to you. But just having that professionalism about you, being as young as he is, coming from USC, and having the success he did there, having, that head on your shoulders, very excited. And then he's a gamer on top of it. I'm really excited from the development I've seen from Chris Rump these 2 preseason games. That first preseason game, for the first 3 series he was out there, got a sack, was consistently beating his man one-on-one, and then they had to bring some double teams, and he was still making his way and getting penetration. I think today I have Chris Rump as my third edge rusher, just based off the work he's put in, the flashes we've seen through camp, the flashes and the plays he's made in the preseason games. I'm excited for him because he's finally starting to make plays, and now that is against second and third string guys. But I think it speaks to the character of the guys that we have in this locker room. We're not shying away from making guys earn their spots, and I think you're seeing the Josh Palmers, the Chris Rumps. They've been putting in time. They've been staying late after practice. They've been picking ears of the Keenan Allens and the Joey Bosa's of the locker rooms, and they're starting to develop. So I'm really excited to see what Chris Rump could put together, because I thought he was easily one of my first half stars of that first preseason game.
And I really liked what I saw from Thule just getting after the quarterback, right? Like those bootlegs, he is killing those bootlegs like crazy. He looks incredible. He's big. I also like that Joey Bosa put on some weight and got back to the playing weight he was when he was a true 4-3 defensive end, because one of the things that makes him so special is that power, right? Like him to be able to collapse the pocket and his strength off the edge. He's fast off the edge, but he's strong as well. And for him to be able to utilize his size, not only from the concerns of his health, right? Because when you're heavier, when you're a little thicker, you can withstand some more injuries, but also being able to go either which direction in terms of, flying speed off the edge or going power and bull rushing and just collapsing it. Having Joey Bosa put on that weight, I think is going to be a huge benefit also for the run game, because he's now heavier and can withstand, stand pulling guards up and really collapse those running lanes a little bit better, because he's got a little more of an anchor behind him to be able to be a factor in that part of the field. Chargers' run defense has been terrible for quite some time. The only thing that concerns me is Bosa's inability to stay away from penalties. He's always been a little too eager, quick off the snap, gets sacks, whatever. But there's just some times where he gets a little hot-headed, draws some personal fouls, or he, jump snaps. So those are some areas I think he needs to clean up. Have you seen anything from any of these backups? It looks like backups being Ty Shelby, Brevin Allen, or Andrew Farmer.
No. Well, not that I haven't seen anything from him. I think Carlo has made some plays. I think Ty Shelby has made some plays. Not enough to knock either one of those top 4 guys off. And I don't think we really need to, because I'm really excited to get into this interior D-line room. Just because I think if you're going to look at like a 5th guy on the D edge, it's because you're not being able to create penetration from the interior. I think we have some really good interior pass rushers. I haven't seen enough from the developing guys in Carlo Camp and Ty Shelby to justify letting Chris Rump walk. Thule is locked up as a second round pick. And Chris Rump has got good. So I'm excited to see him. I don't think those guys have done enough to warrant a roster spot. And they're not even on my radar, if we're being honest.
Yeah, they're really not either. I haven't really seen a whole lot from them. I didn't get a chance to put everything together for the interior D-line yet. But one of the question marks is going to be whether or not Austin Johnson starts on the opening day roster or if he goes straight to the physically unable to perform list, would miss the first 4 games of the season. He just returned to practice, which is awesome. The question is whether or not he's ready to suit up. And I think that's going to have some pretty big implications on who makes this roster. We know Sebastian Joseph Day is going to make it. We know Morgan Fox is going to make it. Let's talk a little bit about Scott Matlock. He had a really, really terrific game. Kind of give me your thoughts on the interior group. How comfortable are you with the depth of this group? And then tell me, who do you think actually makes that roster?
Yeah, I'm ecstatic about the depth. I'm excited. I'm really, really excited about the depth. Sebastian Joseph Day, I think he's the leader of that room, and I think we're really waiting for him to regrasp that form that he was in when Staley was defensive coordinator of the best defense in the league not too long ago. Morgan Fox, that is my pick. I don't think he's going to get the production, just because I don't think he's going to get enough snaps. But I could really see this guy being in the top 5 of pass rush win rate from interior defenders. I think he impacts the game. One of the best impactors of the game, getting after the football between the tackles. A guy who is no slouch in run defense either. Really excited about Morgan Fox. Scott Matlock is just a big body. Really great depth piece.
Athletic big body, too. He is so athletic. It catches me off guard sometimes.
Yeah, he is nice. I'm excited. He's great. I think those three are locks. I think this is a really interesting question because does Austin Johnson go back on the physically unable to perform list? Otito, somebody we saw nice flashes of in his rookie season, a guy who can get after and impact the running game. He's not healthy to go. He will not make the roster. Austin Johnson, I don't know if you want to. I don't know if he'll be ready.
I'm going to put him on. I'm going to put him in our 53 because I feel like he's returning at the right time. And we got, another week before he needs to be activated. He's got some time. If he misses the first 4 games, big deal. He's still going to be on the roster, so he's just going to push whoever else off that last kind of spot. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and say that they carry 6 interior defensive linemen.
Game 1, yeah. So who are your 6 then?
I've got Sebastian Joseph Day, Morgan Fox, Austin Johnson. I think they brought in Nick Williams, and I think that based off I don't know if you saw Brandon Staley's last press conference for the final training camp. He talked about Nick Williams being a big addition to that team, a big addition to the locker room. You don't say that to a guy who's on the bubble. I just don't see him on the bubble. And I mean, we haven't seen him all preseason, but just taking his words for what they are, it seems like Nick Williams is going to make that roster. Scott Matlock has really, he really blew up this last game. He was a wrecker in the backfield, and he was chasing down ball carriers from behind. And for a 310-pound defensive tackle, defensive end, being able to get sideline to sideline, that's super beneficial to your run defense. So I think you're going to see a lot of Scott Matlock play this season. I think that they're going to have a nice rotation going there. Probably going to get somewhere around 10 to 15 snaps a game, being able to just be that guy. And then I want to add a UDFA. I got to add him somewhere. It seems like every year there's one guy right on that bubble. Last year we didn't have one. We're going to return to that this year. I'm going to give it to Gerard Clark because I really, really like the player. I like the story. And I also like just the big 330-pound body. We don't have one of those on the roster right now outside of Nick Williams. But Nick Williams is, in his 30s. Let's go ahead and keep a young guy we're going to develop, make sure we lock that guy down. And I think that we have a roster spot for it.
Yeah. No, I definitely I think 6 guys make this roster spot. I definitely see 6 interior guys making the 53. I agree with all your 5. I like the idea of Gerard Clark making it, who was, somebody who I think was everybody's top pick as a Chargers undrafted free agent to make this roster. David Moa, though, has really been distancing himself as that emergent depth piece on the interior defensive line. He plays a whole lot of snaps throughout the preseason games, and he's been productive in that time. Offers a little more experience, obviously, than Gerard Clark, and more than Otito does, who I think is eventually going to be the guy that makes it, because, like you said, he is that big body that we're missing in this group. But I will say David Momoa is one of those other high motor guys. You can never tell it's him based on his name because his hair covers it up. But you see that hair flowing, and Moa's not too far away from making a play. And so I think it's
He definitely has shine. He probably deserves that roster spot. I just was looking at, if I'm going to pick a single UDFA to make this roster, it's probably going to be him.
There's no others. There's no
I
other
don't
shot.
see another one. Maybe Tyrell Bynum, but even that seems like kind of a stretch. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Keep talking a little bit about this interior group.
What else do we got to talk about?
Well, I think we got it, right? We talked about Scott Matlock. We talked about Nick Williams. And David Moa has showed up. He's probably earned that spot. I think you're right. I think it probably will be David Moa. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here and try to get a UDFA on the roster. And that's really between 2 guys for me. It's Tyrell Bynum and David Moa. Let's talk a little bit about this linebacker room. Eric Kendricks brings a lot of experience, already a huge fan favorite. Kenneth Murray has really been talked about quite a bit in camp. Hopefully, in a contract year, shrugging off some of those injury issues he had. He finally had like his first healthy training camp, and it's shown to the training camp or to the coaching staff. Eric Kendricks has talked about it. A lot of guys have been talking about Kenneth Murray having a big year this season. I really, really liked everything I've seen from Dion Henley over these last 2 games. He's played a lot of snaps, probably the most of any player in the preseason. Nick Neiman's dealing with a little bit of injuries. The Chargers still have Eamon Ogbongbemiga, who's been a mainstay on the special teams units, and they just signed Tate Crowder from the Giants, who was a starter for the last couple of seasons. Talk a bit about this linebacker group.
Yeah, really excited to see Eric Hendricks' impact on this game. I know it's kind of like late in his career, but in his heyday, a phenomenal run defender and a really great teammate and leader. Kenneth Murray, we've been waiting. We gave up a lot of capital to go back up into the first round to grab this guy. You're seeing the athletic flashes, and now it's coming with game knowledge. So he's in the right places, and he's developing exactly like you want the future of that position to develop. In case we weren't going to see this development from Murray, we went and drafted a protection there in Dion Henley, and I think from the aesthetic to the gameplay to the story, a lot to root for from Dion Henley. A gamer, he wants to be out there, grew up not too far away from where the Chargers play their games in Inglewood. I'm really excited about Dion Henley. I was a big fan of his just watching a lot of Pac-12 games this past college season. So excited for that. And then Nick Neiman and Ogbongbemiga, I think you could easily say after return, kick returner, or after return guy, after place kicker, after punter, Nick Neiman and Ogbongbemiga, I think, are our most valuable special team contributors because they are starters on all 4 units. They are good. Nick Neiman was a rookie special team player of the year. And so I think they are big reasons why our special teams isn't something that we're coming on here weekly to bitch about. this special teams unit has really taken a 540-degree turn from what it looked like 3-4 years ago. And those two young guys leading the way are a big reason for it. I know we brought in Blake Lynch as a veteran, a guy who's been a special teams presence. I think he was really brought in because of the injuries of Nick and Amin Agumiga, and I'm really not buying a whole lot into the Tay Crowder just because those are my 5 guys on the top of it. I really think Tay Crowder is just there to get us through the next preseason game against the Niners, just because we don't have a whole lot of guys suiting up. Right now it's Dion, Blake Lynch, and some other guys that I don't know, because Eric Kendricks, Kenneth Murray, Nick and Amin are both dealing with injuries, so I don't see them suiting up come Friday. So I don't think Tay Crowder's. I think he's all a depth piece just to get us through our last preseason game.
Yeah, I kind of liked how Blake Lynch was playing up until I think he got injured, and that's why Dion Henley had to come back out on the field, if I remember correctly. And Nick Neiman isn't out there right now. Eamon Ogbongbemiga has been kind of he's been really well talked about by the coaching staff just throughout his last couple of years with the Chargers. I'm going to say that Blake Lynch, and I'm just going to push him just slowly onto the practice squad. I think they brought in Tay Crowder for a reason. I have Eric Kendricks, Kenneth Murray, Dion Henley, and Nick Neiman and Tay Crowder making the final 53-man roster. I really like the experience that Tay Crowder has. And I think he's played well while he was there with the Giants. And I think there was a reason we brought him in. It wasn't just to practice for a week just for him to, not make this roster. And I think it kind of is between Eamon Ogbongbemiga and Nick Neiman. I think that Nick Neiman kind of fits what the Chargers like at linebacker. They like athletic, rangy guys. And, I look at Ogbongbemiga more as a heavy hitter in the middle of the field there. Somebody that you really don't want playing in coverage. And I just that's kind of why I lean toward Nick Neiman in that situation. He was drafted by the Chargers. Ogbongbemiga is going to be a restricted free agent next season. And I don't really know if anybody's going to go and take Ogbongbemiga off our practice squad. I think that he's a quality special teamer. I think that they were looking to upgrade that position group, and I think that Tay Crowder brings a veteran presence to that group. So it was a little head scratching to me because I felt like we had our linebacker room pretty solid, pretty down. Maybe, Nick Neiman's injury is a little worse than we thought, and maybe he ends up going to the PUP list, and we hold on to, Nick Neiman, and we put Eamon Ogbongbemiga on that roster and try to figure out what we're going to do with that linebacker room in 4 weeks from now. I don't exactly know how that's going to play out, but I feel like we signed Tay Crowder for a reason. We didn't bring in a developmental UDFA guy just to fill a roster spot for a week. We brought in a veteran presence.
And Friday, I think, will be a good indicator of why we brought him in. If he's getting a lot of snaps, if he's starting that game and he's getting a lot of snaps early, I think you nailed it. If he comes in and doesn't see his first snap until the third quarter, that is a filler, because, like you're saying, he is late in the game. This is a new system. If we really don't want him to contribute, he needs to get live reps and he needs to get them fast. So I think we're going to learn a lot about who gets that last linebacker position early on in that last preseason game.
And also, I didn't see Ogbongbemiga play at all for the Saints, against the Saints. I don't even remember seeing them playing against the Rams. It's been all Dion Henley.
Both Nick and Amin are nursing something.
So if that's the case, then it really is, depth, and maybe they, resort to the practice squad. One of them does. But bringing in Crowder, they brought in a veteran presence, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see if either of them are ready to go for the 53-man roster. If not, then one of them is probably going to hit waivers. Hopefully we can keep them both, but I just, something's going to happen there. And I don't know what it is, but something's going to happen there. Moving on to the cornerbacks, I have us only keeping 5 this year. J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel, Michael Davis, Jasir Taylor, Dean Leonard. J.C.'s been practicing. I think that he's going to be ready week 1. We'll see what version of J.C. Jackson we get because I'm a little nervous about the situation. I felt like last training camp, you heard a lot of J.C. Jackson. He was making plays all the time. He's been a little more quiet. He's a couple plays here and there, a couple highlights. I think he had one against the joint practice against the Cowboys, but this was not the year where you were hearing JC, making play after play after play. That guy has been Asante Samuel. Asante Samuel has been everywhere. Probably going to be our starting slot. I think that he more than ran away with that. He hasn't played at all during the preseason. Jasir Taylor's been playing. That's an indicator right off the bat of who won that job. That job's already decided. I think that his coverage abilities is too much. It's too good to be able to go and take some of the slack that you get in the run game. Maybe he's improved that aspect of his game. And then we know Michael Davis is going to be starting on the opposite side. And then Jasir Taylor, he's played a lot. He's played a lot for these last preseason games. He's had some ups and some downs. I feel like it's been more down. I feel like he's been on the highlight reel of a ton of wide receiver, splash plays during this preseason. I think that his development as a coverage corner has just got a lot to go. Dean Leonard also been very quiet, but I think he's a core special teamer. He's definitely going to make this roster as a gunner because that's what made him so special last season.
Yeah, that's my 5. I have us keeping 5. JC, I want to see the comeback player of the year performance from him. Hard to get it as a DB, but pick off another 7 interceptions like he used to when he was playing for the Patriots, and I think you got a serious conversation there. Michael Davis coming off a career year, Asante Samuel coming off of his best training camp. Got 3 quality coverage corners right there. John Taylor, I love what he adds from a physical standpoint. I would say arguably one of the best tacklers that we have in the secondary on this entire roster, even looking at the safety room. Obviously, I'm going to go Derwin James, and then John Taylor is a great tackler, is a part of the reason why he is a great gunner on special teams. But I like that versatility, being able to slide him in there when teams want to go run heavy. And then if you're going to play us like traditional NFL teams do in this day and age, you want a lockdown pass coverage corner. I'm going to take the 3-4 yards that you're going to get on a run play. I also think Asante Samuel is hungry and is very coachable. I think you're going to see a significant improvement from Asante Samuel as a tackler this year. That's just the next step in his progression. What can he get better at? Tackling, and that will get him from really good to, I think, elite. And then Dean Leonard, really good depth piece and a phenomenal gunner. Stands out to me last year, that play where he just trucks his blocker right into the Broncos receiver and ended up sealing us that game. So really, really excited about that cornerback group. But I do, those 5 are there. Keeman Hall, I think, was making a run for that. I think injuries kind of put that to kind of put that story to sleep. But could definitely see Keeman Hall making an appearance here later in the year as a fill-in for an injury. Because I did like the flashes that we've seen early on in his young career.
And then the last group that we got to talk. Well, actually, before we get to that, have you been impressed by any of the other 6+ cornerbacks during the preseason? Because I want to talk a little bit about Matt Hankins. Matt Hankins was like a UFL like stud. Mm-hmm. They signed him kind of late in the process. I think he showed up a little bit in the games against the Saints. I think he showed up a little bit. I think I was reading a couple of breakups he had in Daniel Popper's. By the way, Daniel Popper, thank you for everything you do, man, because you really you provide such great content When I'm not there at training camp, I've got like my inside man there who's going to tell me everything I need to know. So big shout out to Daniel Popper. But Matt Hankins and I think Taiwan Mullen has popped a couple times as well.
Yeah, that would be the only other guy that I've even seen make plays. I think Ty Mullen, we most recently saw getting some tackles on special teams, even though he's a smaller guy.
5'8", 181 pounds. He's a slight guy.
He's a small guy for NFL standards. I'm sorry, he could bench press me, but still more willing tackler than his size would let you to believe. And I thought he made some good plays. Nothing I don't think he's even close to Jaws level or what we've seen from Leonard thus far. But love keeping the receiver and the cornerback pipeline going. You can never have too much of those guys. So if we want to go ahead and stash him and let him develop on that practice squad, wouldn't be surprised, especially with Keeman Hall. I don't think he is healthy enough to play.
Keenan, he was actually released. So he was released with an injury designation.
There you go.
Had surgery. So yeah, Keeman Hall is not going to be part of that group. And then I'm also just stashing Cam Brown. I think that he played a lot, which shows that there's a lot of guys in this cornerback room, and I think Cam Brown played quite a bit this preseason. I think that's kind of just showing the hand a little bit, probably somebody they want to try to develop. So I'm stashing him. So I've got Matt Hankins as my 13th practice squad guy, and I'll show everybody this in a second. Cam Brown, and then Taiwan Mullen's probably been the best of that group right on the bubble. Closing it out with our safeties and our special teams units. We'll talk about the special teams unit last. Derwin James is Derwin James. Don't really have to say too much about that. Alohi Gilman's been nursing some injuries, but he's going to be our starting safety. JT Woods, which I'm sure you're excited to talk about. And then I actually have Raheem Lane making that final roster spot over Mark Webb. And then you got Cameron Dicker, J.K. Scott, and Josh Harris. So go ahead and talk about your safeties.
So are you keeping on your final roster? Are you keeping 3 quarterbacks?
I'm keeping 2. We'll get into it. I'll share my screen.
Okay. Derwin is Derwin. Excited for the development that Lowe was making through training camp before. He went down with the injuries that he's nursing. JT Woods, I think, has been making some plays. Made some really stupid plays, but has also made some really good plays. I think the most glaring play for me was that just the boneheaded slap on the head in that first preseason game after he made a nice play. Can't do that. But I'm going to take that for my 3rd safety, who didn't have a lot to celebrate last year. Let's just be honest. He didn't get any type of looks. He wasn't making splashes in training camp, and now has something to celebrate. So let it out a little bit. That's fine. Very physical tackler. Even though he's skinny, wiry, rangy, the dude can hit, and he wants to hit. Really excited about his development, because I was really worried there for a little bit. Going up to grab this guy as in the third round, not seeing that development as a rookie. Starting to slow down for him in his second season. Raheem Lane, phenomenal depth piece, contributor in the special teams unit. I have us carrying 5 safeties, just because I want 10. I'm going with 10 DBs total, especially with Keeman Hall's injury designation. I'd rather the diversity of a 10th DB than a 3rd quarterback. For that reason, I have Mark Webb slipping in there. But if I was going 4 safeties, I do think Raheem Lane has shown a little more thus far in his career. But I'm going 5 safeties, 5 cornerbacks for my roster.
Yeah, I'm off by 2.
Let's see. So quarterbacks.
So yeah, I think Mark Webb's probably that next guy in this list.
Running
I
backs,
don't know how I did this.
Fullback. 1, 2, 3, 6 receivers.
So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put Mark Webb on here because that's my next guy. So looks like I miscounted a little bit, so missed one player, but Mark Webb's going to be that final safety then because I think that he's a core special teamer for sure. He's on every special teams unit just about, and I think Raheem Lane's probably first in line because I think he's also been kind of a core special teamer kind of everywhere. So yeah, probably carrying 5 safeties, and then you got Cameron Dicker, J.K. Scott, and Josh closing out the special teams unit. I just don't think that Dustin Hopkins has played very much. And I think that Cameron Dicker earned the job last season. He solidified that this offseason, made a lot of kicks. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago when we were really stressing who was going to be our kicker. Michael Badgley, who couldn't hit from over 40 yards.
And just got released, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And I like Badgley, but, I think that the inability to kick from 50 yards was a huge handicap to the Chargers in years past. And I feel like these last 2 seasons, we've had a really good string of luck with Dustin Hopkins and Cameron Dicker. You're not going to save a whole lot of money. You maybe try to get, a late round pick for Dustin Hopkins if somebody's really needy. I'm sure there's teams that are going to be needy, willing to give up a 7th round draft pick or something like that for a kicker. But Cameron Dicker, big Dicker energy, bro. I'm all about Cameron Dicker. So let's go ahead and make him our kicker. J.K. Scott and Josh Harris will close out that group as our kicker and punter and long snapper. Out of this group, what are you looking to kind of upgrade? Are you happy with the roster as it is, or is there anybody that you're thinking about, that could potentially come available on the waiver wire, or a veteran that we need? I already talked about the offensive line, but anywhere else on this roster you're looking at trying to upgrade a little bit?
I think the biggest, I feel like, upgrade as far as like a guy who will impact our win-loss column, a legitimate run blocking tight end.
I could see that.
And you'd be instantly getting number 2 reps, especially with Parham's inconsistency and the lack of development we've seen the last couple of years from Trey McKitty. Love what I've seen from Stone Smart, but would love an addition that would make him expendable on this roster. Because I think he has plenty of time to develop. I wouldn't mind a depth piece at tackle. As far as starters go, I'm really excited at the top of our depth chart. Little concerned about O-line depth. And that's really my only concern, I guess, at this point. I think you could always stand to improve, but with our cap restraints, with who we have in place right now, run blocking tight end, I think, is the only addition that would make me excited. Anything else, I think, is derailing our future as far as like a big free agent signing. But wouldn't be surprised to see a Telesco value signing right here at the last second. But right now, based on what I think guys are valued, those are really the only positions that I'm looking to add. Run blocking tight end and O-line depth.
Yeah, I feel like blocking just in general is kind of what we're kind of worried about. We're worried about the depth of those groups. Even Gerald Everett isn't known for his blocking ability. And honestly, I haven't heard much about it over training camp, but I'm honestly not very comfortable with Donald Parham, Stone Smart, Trey McKitty either. I think I like the upside of what Donald Parham could be as a receiver, but we haven't seen it. Gerald Everett's going to be free agent next season. Donald Parham's a free agent next season. You're going to be stuck with Stone Smart, Trey McKitty. So, like, even just having somebody that you could bring in, potentially re-sign on a cheap contract makes a lot of sense. It's a group that we probably need to upgrade, especially because of how much Kellen Moore uses those 2 tight end sets. We're going to see a lot of Donald Parham, potentially Stone Smart and Trey McKitty this season, just based off of the scheme of what he does. I would love for him to go out there 4 wide receiver sets all the time with, Austin Eckler catching passes out of the backfield. But I don't want to become too predictable with that, right? And having those 2 tight end sets and running out of them, play action out of them, we do it a lot. We need to be able to establish that run game. Donald Parham did not look good against the run in either game from what I saw. That's a big area that there's a hole. There's a huge hole for tight end 2.
No, and I know this team historically likes to use a lot of tight end sets, but that is critical in Kellen Moore's system. Personnel groupings, mixing up your receiver depth, mixing up your running back depth, mixing up your tight end depth. Without that ability, that versatility on the depth chart to be able to do that, I think you're missing an element of what makes Kellen Moore's offense exciting, and that is the unpredictability. I don't want to be, keyholed in important decisions, rolling out 2 tight end sets, knowing damn well the defense knowing damn well that tight end number 2 is just a decoy. So being able to keep teams honest, being able to keep them guessing, and not being able to tip your hand, that's what you want to do with personnel groupings. And right now, I'm not sure Donald Parham or Trey McKitty are as the wild cards that you would want them to be in this system.
Yeah, I would say throughout the rest of this roster, those are my only issues. Across the whole roster, I'm pretty happy across the board. Zach Bailey, Donald Parham, Stone Smart, Trey McKitty. Some kind of upgrade there. That's where the only gap is. I think that we're really strong at linebacker. I think we have 3 guys who could legitimately play heavy downs, and we would be ecstatic with all of them. I'm a little concerned with J.C. Jackson. I just don't know what version I'm going to get. I'll make him just kind of yellow just because I think that you could see like a resurgence from him. I think he's got a lot to play for. And I just don't think that this group is very strong. Outside of that, I'm green across the board everywhere else.
No, I mean, it's very hard to build and roll out a Super Bowl caliber roster week in and week out. But this is as excited, the least amount of question marks and holes I think we've seen from a Chargers roster in a long time. As comfortable as I could be this time of the year. I think I'm more comfortable with this team than I've been. The last team I was this comfortable with was probably the LT 12-4 year where our heart was broken anyway. So
yeah,
I would roster. Just don't break my heart and don't lose to the Patriots or the Jets in the playoffs, and we're going to be fine.
Yeah, I would say we're pretty deep across the board. Probably like every team's got holes. We just kind of pointed it out to everybody, kind of what those holes, what those concerns are. Mm-hmm. This is all green, man. Like this, even Easton Stick as a backup is like a net positive.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I even like the practice squad. Like I'm actually excited about a lot of these players. I'm excited about Tywan Mullen. This isn't going to be Mark Webb. You've actually got an open spot here. I'm excited for Brendan Jaimes, who we drafted in the 6th round, resorting to the practice squad. That means you've got strength elsewhere on that group, even if I don't believe it, right? That's what they believe. We've got some developmental prospects here. We're also going to be getting a Tito and Jalen Guyton back at some point during the season. This roster is deep, it's strong, and there's a lot to be excited for. Any closing remarks, Zach?
No.
I got one more for you then.
Yeah, what we got?
So, who has the most to play for in this last preseason game?
Oh, that's a good question. Who has the most to play
And while
for?
you're thinking about that, I'm going to talk about Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller. I think both guys are going to play a lot because I think that we need to determine some sort of batting order for these two guys. We haven't seen either of them really break out. I know Isaiah Spiller had that 71-yard touchdown run that was called back, but we have not seen like somebody really take that RB2 spot. Austin Eckler's been talking about it for years. Who's gonna earn the right to back me up and get a significant number of carries? This offense, it's gonna need an RB2. We're going to have somebody take that lead. I don't know who it's going to be. Those are two guys that I'm really looking for. I don't think it really matters in terms of like who's going to make the roster. They're both going to. But this game, I want to see 10 carries from each. And I want to see who actually runs away with that. Let them play into the third quarter. Let them figure it out. And then, fourth quarter, you're putting out Elijah Dotson and some no names. Probably only going to see one full drive of the starters, if any. I want to see who's going to run away with that. And, it's the only time you can really decide that is when you're going to the ground, and this is your last chance before the start of the season.
No, yeah. And that's pivotal to our success. One of those guys emerging and not just getting those snaps because somebody has to get them. You want somebody to go and claim that. And I think that's why my guy with the most to prove, not a whole lot of questions as far as who's going to make this 53. For me, the big one, I think Parham, I think Trey McKitty have lots of room to grow. I think they're pretty solid. There's going to be a ninth tackle, or there's going to be a ninth lineman that makes this team, and I think it's just going to be by default. I don't think anybody has shown enough to secure that spot. I'm going to go with closing this out on a high note. The kid has led the team in receiving yards the last 2 years, has been through 4 or 5 training camps this far in his career, has not made an opening day roster. It's time for Keelan to make that. It's time for Keelan Doss to make an opening day roster. He's put in so much time and effort into his craft, and I want him to establish it in a way that it's going to make it a difficult question when Jalen Guyton becomes healthy. I want it to be a deliberation between the coaching staff. Like, does Jalen just get this job, or has Keelan done enough to not concern us, but to at least ask the question? I think Jalen eventually does get back into that role when he's healthy enough. But I'd love to see Keelan Doss go and establish that game, or establish that 6th receiver spot. And I think 3-4 catches and a touchdown should do it for me. I'd like to see that kid get in the end zone, because has led the team in receptions and receiving yards the last 2 games. I think the one thing missing from his resume to really cap off a phenomenal offseason would be a touchdown against the Niners, and great depth over there. So it wouldn't be some slouch TD either.
All right, thank you guys so much for listening. We're getting back into a weekly rhythm now that the season started, now that life's calming down. If you guys are ever around the Santee area, come to the Balance Yoga Studio. Get your Zen. Get your Namaste.
Namaste.
Talk to you guys later. Namaste.